صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. The time is now 6:30 and we will begin our program this evening. As you know, we've moved this program to be a little bit earlier, but nonetheless, in the interest of time, we're actually going to go ahead and begin this program promptly with the recitation of the Noble Quran, Surah Ar-Rum, verses 1 through 10, by Brother Kihan Haider. Let's welcome him forward with a loud salawat. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. غلبت الروم في أدنى الأرض وهم من بعد غلبهم سيغلبون في بضع سنين. لله الأمر من قبل ومن بعد ويومئذ يفرح المؤمنون بنصر الله ينصر من يشاء وهو العزيز الرحيم. وعد الله لا يخلف الله وعده ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. يعلمون ظاهرا من الحياة الدنيا وهم عن الآخرة هم غافلون. أولم يتفكروا في أنفسهم ما خلق الله السماوات والأرض وما بينهما إلا بالحق وأجل مسمى وإن كثيرا من الناس بلقاء ربهم لكافرون. أولم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبلهم كانوا أشد منهم قوة وأثاروا الأرض وعمروها أكثر مما عمروها وجاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات فما كان الله ليظلمهم ولكن كانوا أنفسهم يظلمون. ثم كان عاقبة الذين أساءوا السوء أن كذبوا بآيات الله وكانوا بها يستهزئون. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Alif Lam Mim. The Romans have been defeated in a nearby land. Yet following their defeat they will triumph within 3 to 9 years. The whole matter rests with Allah before and after victory, and on that day the believers will rejoice at the victory willed by Allah. He gives victory to whoever He wills, for He is the Almighty, most merciful. This is the promise of Allah, and Allah never fails in His promise. But most people do not know. They only know the worldly affairs of this life, but are totally oblivious to the hereafter. Have they not reflected upon their own being? Allah only created the heavens and the earth and everything in between for a purpose and an appointed term. Yet most people are truly in denial of the meeting with their Lord. Have they not traveled throughout the land to see what was the end of those destroyed before them? They were far superior in might. They cultivated the land and developed it more than these Meccans ever have. Their messengers came to them with clear proofs. Allah would have never wronged them, but it was they who wronged themselves. The most evil was the end of the evildoers for denying and mocking the signs of Allah. Sadaqallahul Aliyyul Azim.
MashaAllah, Kehan. That was a wonderful recitation of Surah Rum. For his Sehat and Salamti and Khair wa Barakat, let us all recite a loud salawat for him. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Kehan Heather. Yeah. Brothers and sisters, tonight we gather on the eve of the 8th of Muharram, a night that we set aside to remember Hazrat Abbas ibn Ali alayhi salam. He was the moon of Bani Hashim, the flag bearer in Karbala, and the embodiment of unwavering loyalty and devotion. And so tonight, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who stand firm when others hesitate. Grant us the strength and courage of Abbas. Let us carry the flag of truth even when the world turns away. And if we were to fall, let it be in your path with Hussein's name on our lips. In his remembrance, inshallah, we will have his alam brought forward during the time of Matam upstairs. And with that, I would like to request our next speaker, Sister Zainab Ghadir, if she could please come forward to the podium at this time. We can welcome her with a loud salawat. Salli ala.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Respected elders, brothers, and sisters, tonight we gather in these sacred nights of Muharram. Our hearts turn once again to the burning plains of Karbala, where every heartbeat, every drop of blood, and every whisper of loyalty carried meaning. Tonight, I don't want to talk about just what happened. I want to talk about who we become when we understand the role of Hazrat Abbas ibn Ali, Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, the moon of Bani Hashim. Hazrat Abbas wasn't just the son of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he wasn't just the brother of Imam Hussein, and he wasn't just the flag bearer of Karbala. Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam was the walking definition of loyalty, humility, and strength. Even as the enemies feared his sword, they respected his dignity, and despite his unmatched strength, the one thing he never let go of was the obedience to his Imam. When Hazrat Abbas stood at the banks of the Euphrates, his lips were dry, his body was worn, and his arms were heavy. He scoops the water into his hands, but then he pauses. He looks at the water and says, "How can I drink when the children of Imam Hussein are thirsty?" He drops the water and fills the mushk with water. He then turns back with the water skin in one hand and courage in the other. And that moment was not just about thirst. It was about values, purpose. It was about loyalty. Hazrat Abbas' story teaches us many lessons. One being, loyalty isn't about comfort. It's about commitment. Hazrat Abbas had every excuse to drink, to rest, and to prioritize himself. But he chose loyalty, even when it cost him everything. In a world full of peer pressure and trends, Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam teaches us to remain firm with the truth, even when it isolates us. So ask yourself, am I loyal to my values when it's hard, or only when it's easy? Hazrat Abbas' story also teaches us to be obedient with understanding. Hazrat Abbas didn't follow blindly. he understood why Imam Hussein stood against Yazid. His loyalty came from knowledge and love, not just family ties. So ask yourself, do I truly understand my faith, or am I just repeating rituals without any reflection? Use your strengths for the truth. Hazrat Abbas was strong, fierce, and skilled, but he used that power to defend, not to dominate. So today, if you have a voice, influence, knowledge, or creativity, use it for justice. Use it to serve your Imam. Use your platform to serve the oppressed and to uplift the truth, not to feed your ego. When Hazrat Abbas fell in Karbala, he didn't cry out, brother. He cried out, Adrikni, Adrikni ya Mawla, help me, O my master. Even in pain, even with no arms, and even in his last breath, he never forgot that Hussein wasn't just his brother. He was his Imam. This is loyalty. Hazrat Abbas is not just someone who we mourn. He is someone we become. In a world full of confusion and pressure, be the flag bearer of truth. Be the one who stands when others remain silent. And be the Abbas of your time, for your Imam, for your values, and for your soul. Be loyal like Abbas. When you're tested by society, by peer pressure, or even by your own nafs, remember the water skin. Remember the arms that were severed. And remember the loyalty that never broke. Let's not just mourn Abbas, let's live like Hazrat Abbas. And may Allah allow us to carry the flag of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam the way Hazrat Abbas carried the flag of Imam Hussein. Salawat.
Sister Zainab, that was a wonderful, motivating speech. Thank you so much. For her, Sayyidina Salamti and Khair Barakat, let us all recite a loud salawat. Brothers and sisters, I would now like to share some community announcements. Firstly, registration for the Bethel Ilm Academy Sunday School is now open for ages 2 to 15. For more information, please visit our website under the Sunday School tab, or you can see our weekly emails, as well as you can reach the administration at sundayschool@bethelelm.org. Secondly, Bethel Ilm has been hosting weekly ladies' majalis every Saturday at 11 a.m. These majalis will continue through August 30th, and for more information, again, you can visit our website. Thirdly, tonight, the Mehdi Youth Sisters Group will be hosting a discussion with Hujjat al-Islam, Sayyid Sulayman Hasan Abidi, immediately following a namaz. So once we conclude here, we'll go upstairs, and then after Salat al-Maghribin, for the sisters, please come back down in this lecture hall, and that program will get started. And then lastly, the Who is Hussein Chicago chapter will again be hosting a back-to-school drive to help over 2,000 students in disadvantaged areas in Chicago. Please visit the booth upstairs in the lobby to see how you can help. And while I have you, if you could please kindly check your cell phones to ensure that they are either on mute or on vibrate at this time. With that, I would like to now request our young reciter, Brother Muhammad Hussein, to please come forward at this time for his recitation of poetry. Let's welcome him with a loud salawat.
Assalamu alaikum. Today I will be reciting 2 English poems in honor of Hazrat Abbas. The first piece is called Where Are Your Hands, and was written by Nuri Sardar. Please recite aloud salawat. Where are your hands to wipe the tears they're crying? these sands. From thirst these girls are dying, your banner stands. For Abbas it is calling, where are your hands? Where are your hands to wipe the tears they're crying upon these sands? From thirst these girls are dying, your banner stands. For Abbas it is calling, where are your hands? Is it the day of judgment? Fires are burning your tent. They cry, holding my garment. Abbas, Abbas. They saw your flag had fallen, confused, their only children. One name by them is spoken, Abbas, Abbas. Their skin covered no longer white in ashes. Their eyes watch your tent set alight in pieces, running from your tent in their fright. It crushes. It cannot be that the tent of Abbas falls. It cannot be. These queens unguarded by walls. It cannot be. No Abbas answers their calls. Where are your hands? Where are your hands to wipe the tears they're crying upon these sands? From thirst these girls are dying, your banner stands. For Abbas it is calling, where are your hands? The last thing they remember, on his horse their flag bearer, leaving to bring them water. Abbas, Abbas, Auntie, has he not come back? Our tongues from thirst have turned black. They faint resting on my back. Abbas, Abbas, how many hands tug on my dress? Oh brother, I raise my hands, may Allah bless them. Water in the form of our courageous flag bearer. Where are your eyes to gaze upon our anguish? Where are your eyes to watch the fire flourish? Where are your eyes whose sight makes despair vanish? Where are your hands? Could it be that your two palms that rip apart all our harms are not attached to your arms? Abbas, Abbas, could it be that an arrow has broken your sister's hope, and blood from your eye would flow? Abbas, Abbas, did your body fall to the ground? It's shaking I hear from Hussein's back a sound, it's breaking. Has our Uncle Abbas been found? They're asking, Lord, give him wings to fly towards these children. Lord, give him wings, carrying water with him. Lord, give him wings. From his wings their thirst broken. Where are your hands? Where are your hands? To wipe the tears they're crying upon these sands. From thirst these girls are dying. Your banner stands. For Abbas it is calling. Where are your hands? Salawat. For my second poem, I will be reciting a poem titled Abbas, written by Sayyid Ali Khalkhali. Please recite another salawat. Abbas, 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 Abbas. We the Shia today gather, the son of Ali we all remember. We all till dawn shall mourn together. We'll cry for the son of Haydar. Every night, every day, I'll say, Abbas, 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 Abbas. Abbas, at your birth, Ali would cry. He pooled the tears for the day you die. The day on which on the sands you lie, your hands cut off, an arrow in your eye. Haydar would mourn your death, Abbas, 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 Abbas. Your need to reach the cool water in order to get for Hussein's daughter, and for his 6-month son called Asghar, and for your Hussein, master, but you did not drink the water, Abbas, 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 Abbas. We the Shia shall never understand how it felt for you to fall on that land, on the scorching and red hot sands, without your two right and left hands. What a sacrifice you gave, Abbas, 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 Abbas. Salawat.
MashaAllah Muhammad for a heartfelt recitation for his Sayyid Sulayman and khair wa barakat. Let us all recite loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers, if I can request you at this time, if you could please take a few steps forward. As you can expect, there will be plenty more people coming throughout the lecture. I would now like to recognize our generous sponsors for tonight's program. For the health, safety, and continued blessings, for the family of Brother Shaukat Zaidi, please recite a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The sponsor has requested that you remember the marhumeen of your families as well as the marhumeen of their families. Please join me now in reciting a Surah Fatiha preceded by a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, I want to take a moment and revisit the topic of the blood drive that I brought up yesterday. So last night, I would say something quite incredible happened, right? When I asked who will give in the name of Hussein, at least what I could tell, it seemed as if there were at least 100 hands that were raised, ready to pledge and donate in the memory of Imam Hussein. And I'll tell you, standing from this podium, it was really a remarkable display of unity and intention. But today, when I checked with the blood drive team, they said that there were only 21 donors who actually completed the registration since last night. And so I wanted to bring this to your attention that we still have 77 slots that we are trying to fill. And look, I know sometimes we will raise our hands and we'll make these commitments with the best of intentions, and oftentimes we may forget to follow through with that. But as you all know, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he didn't just teach us to have good intentions. We have to follow through and we have to act on those intentions. If you raised your hand last night, act on it. Fulfill your pledge. And if you didn't raise your hand, What's holding you back from saving a life in the name of Imam Hussein? The blood you give may literally be the difference between life and death for a parent, a child, a sibling. And so, brothers and sisters, let's show that when this community raises its hand, that we show up. Now, as we turn towards our lecture tonight, please, I ask you once again to double check your cell phones to make sure that they are on mute or on vibrate. And with that, it is my utmost privilege to kindly request Hujjat al-Islam, Sayyid Sulayman Hasan Abidi, to please come to the minbar at this time. Let us all stand and move forward as we welcome him with a loud salawat.
Surah Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين فاطر السماوات والأرضين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه إن الله بالغ أمره قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. As we have been discussing over the last several nights, Allah gives us a solution and a cure for the sickness or the crisis that we have in our lives and that we see in our society of a lack of faith. Whether that be a lack of faith because people don't recognize and affirm the belief in and the worship of, or even the existence of their Creator, or whether that crisis show itself not in an explicit denial, but in negligence or weakness in following and obeying the command of Allah. We have seen that there are different areas where Allah may have a command or an expectation, and even those of us who say that we believe in God, we don't begin our decision making and planning for our lives on the basis of what is the command, what is the pleasure, what is the duty we have towards our Creator, but rather we think of it in terms of our own wish or our own comfort or our own preference. And that is an inversion of the priority that we should have. In fact, this is a mistake that people sometimes make with dua as well. You've all heard that there are some people who are mustajabud da'wah, meaning their prayers are always answered. And when people find that there is such a rank, that some people's prayers are answered, Allah does not refuse them, then they say, if only I could get my hand on that magic spell, thinking that it is some sort of magic, something similar that we read about in fiction, that if you do this act, then Allah will answer your prayer. If you say this dua, Allah will answer your prayer. If you go for ziyarat, then Allah will answer your prayer. And we mistakenly think that what that means is that Allah is then going to become our servant. Maybe not explicitly, but if I make that kind of prayer that, oh Allah, this is what I want, why can't you make it happen? How much money do I need to put on the table? How many prayers do I need to put on the table? 100 rak'ah? Is that enough? You're not convinced? All right, I can do 200 rak'ah. Just tell me, Allah, what do you need? What haja, what nadhr, or what vow will convince you? And then sometimes people will say, I went to Karbala once, twice, 3 times, and my prayer was not answered. You went to Karbala? Karbala? Did you go to a mall? And speaking kind of frankly, not because I want to call out anyone else other than myself, but sometimes the more directly and frankly we confront the absurdity of our own assumptions, the easier it is for that curtain to fall, the veil to fall. So did I go to a mall in Karbala and buy some things and come back, or did I go to Imam Hussein? And if I went to Imam Hussein, whatever haja brought me there, I should think this was just the gift that God gave me, the excuse that God gave me to put everything else aside and bring me to Imam Hussein. But how can I come to the shrine of the person who stood on the afternoon of Ashura and looked over the martyred bodies of his companions and his family members and said, "Hawwana alayya ma nazala bi annahu bi'aynillah." The only thing that consoles me in this difficulty is that Allah is seeing all that I am suffering, and that makes the suffering not something that is difficult to bear, but it gives me strength, it gives me consolation to know that if Allah did not want, then none of this would have taken place. How can I go and say, "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah," and then come out and say, "Allah, you didn't do what I wanted"? If I go to Karbala, then my prayer will be answered. But if I go to Karbala and I ignore Imam Hussein, then have I really gone to Karbala and have I really done ziyarah? And so dua is not a genie that comes out of some antique container, antique bottle, and says you get a free wish or 3 free wishes. But rather, it is an opportunity for me to come and to offer myself to Allah. And if I offer myself to Allah, then Allah does say, you become so noble and so honorable in my eyes that I will bend my decree according to your prayer and according to your wish. That is true. It's not just a hook that Allah says, I'll answer your prayer, but only if you pray for what I want. It is true. But you only earn that honor and that rank if you have offered yourself and you have dedicated yourself to worship of Allah. If you come as a penitent and not as somebody with demands and requirements. And the sign of it is not that you don't come to Allah with a prayer or with a haja. You want to accomplish something. And maybe it isn't even for yourself. It is for a parent. It is for a relative. It is for a child. And so there is an element of sacrifice and altruism even in the haja that you are asking Allah for, even in the prayer that you are asking for. That is all good. And in fact, you should come to Allah. Whether it be when you go for ziyarah, or whether it be a special day of dua, like the day of Arafah or the nights of Qadr, or whether it be any dua that you make after even a daily prayer, that is a special time of prayer. It is good to have specific needs and asks from Allah. But one sign that can tell me whether it is a demand where I am implicitly saying, Allah, you belong to me, you need to do what I want, or whether it is a humble petition, asking Allah, but then trusting in His final judgment, is if what I ask does not come to pass. And Allah gives me an answering of my prayer, because He always answers prayers, but in a different way than what I expected. Maybe the answer is the reward that I will get in the hereafter. Maybe the answer is the serenity that I will get even if my wish was not originally granted. Maybe the answer is that I will see that as my life takes a detour, then it is the hand of Allah that is the stronger hand directing me in the future paths that I take in my life than my own hand and my own planning and my own decision making was effective in my life. Maybe that is the answer of the prayer. And if that is the answer of the prayer, and Allah makes me see that it is His hand, it is His wish, it is His wisdom that is governing my life, then whatever it is that I may have been asking, the cure from any sickness, 100 additional years of life, 100 million additional dollars, what can be more valuable than Allah to say, I might not give you that, but I will show you that I am the one leading you. I am the one guiding you. I am the one bringing about the outcome and the effects that are best for you in your life, even beyond what you might have planned. Now, which one is a better outcome? When it actually comes to our frustrations as our prayers are not answered, we'll forget. I'll forget myself. But at least let us affirm in theory and in principle that we understand and we believe that if Allah gives us what He knows to be best, that is more pleasing to us than if He gives us what we asked, whatever it might be. And as long as I have that realization and I struggle to make my soul accept it, then the petition is not a bad thing, it is a good thing. Now, of course, the natural question that comes is, well, if God knows everything, then who am I to ask? If I am ignorant and God is the one with all knowledge, then I really shouldn't be able to go and say, oh Allah, please cure my loved one from their illness. I should say, Allah, whatever you give. I shouldn't say, oh Allah, help me get married. Because maybe to suffer and it is suffering to be single, regardless of how much married people might try to keep the prize away from you and tell you that they're suffering in marriage. I'm not saying that in material terms. Tomorrow, inshallah, I am going to give my politically incorrect speech and maybe speak about some principles within the family that are important for us to remember and affirm. That is not today's speech, though. Today I don't want to alienate you that much. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I'll suffice it just to say that regardless of what people may think, people who are single or people who are married, it is a blessing. And it is a gift from Allah, in spite of all the hardships and the struggles. But I wouldn't pray to Allah, oh Allah, I want to get married, because what if that is not right for me at this moment? So I should say, oh Allah, whatever. Now, why is it that Allah has told us to pray and pray with insistence? That Allah does not get turned off by ilhahul mulihin. When Ya man la yubrimuhu ilhahul mulihin, that when people insist, normally what happens is, you kind of get stubborn and you get a little bit annoyed. If you come to me and say once, can you do this for me? I'll say, sorry, I'm not able to. Then you'll remind me a second time. You'll remind me a third time. But by the 15th time, hopefully, you'll get the hint. And if you don't, then I might have maybe some unkind words. Allah is not like that. Why? If He is all-knowing and we are not, then you would say that, well, whatever Allah knows to be right, that is what we should ask for. And we should never say that, Allah, I want the cure to this sickness. I want help in paying off this debt. I want to get this job. I want to get into that school. I want to get married. I want to be able to have kids. I want to buy this house, because I don't know and Allah does know. And of course, Allah doesn't want us just to make a generic prayer. He does want us to make specific prayers. One very simple and straightforward answer to that question is that prayer is not just a word that you say and then it stays somewhere in the spiritual realm. It is the connection between your physical life and actions on this world and the spiritual higher realm that ensures the reward of good deeds and the eternity of our actions. And so because our actions on this world, they require us to start and to plan and to remove our inertia, Allah wants us to ask Him for something specific. Not just whatever I might want in my whim, but I ask what I think based on the intellect He has given me, based on the experience that I have or the advice that I have access to from ulama, from family members, from experienced people within my circle of friends and community members. Whatever I think is best, Allah wants me to ask for that thing. Why? Because on this material world, I have to make an effort. Let's say that there is a sickness that a family member has that I want to get cured. Well, if Allah wants me to seek cure, then my prayer should also reflect the fact that for a connection between this material realm and the eternal realm, Allah is the one who is going to provide the cure. And He will extend the life so long as it is in His wisdom, and whenever the time for a person comes, there is no cure for death. And Allah is the one who decrees death. It might be at an old age, it might be at a young age, it might be after a protracted illness where it isn't unexpected, or it might be sudden. Only Allah knows. But if Allah has decreed the cure, that cure will come from Allah, but it will come through means that Allah has created within this earth. And so the only way that I can pray to Allah is if I make an effort to seek those means, not thinking that they are independent actors and agents giving me what I want, but recognizing that these are means that God has created. And if He decrees, they will have the desired effect. And if not, then I can have the best state-of-art treatment and it will not extend a person's life. And because dua represents that connection, then I should also ask Allah that based on everything You have taught me, I know that life is sacred and we are to do everything in our power through our actions, through our prayers, through our efforts to extend the life. Therefore, O Allah, my prayer is that You extend the life of my loved one or myself. But implicit within that insistent prayer is that, Allah, I am only insisting because you taught me to. I am only asking because you gave me the intellect. You gave me the obligation to be in charge of this affair. Otherwise, my insistence is not a claim that I know better. My insistence and my repeated prayer and my worry is not because I in any way doubt your wisdom. And that is illustrated in a very beautiful incident from the life of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Once again, recite salawat and move forward, inshallah. You may have heard me quote this incident before, so I will say it very briefly. A child of the Imam, a young child, was very ill. And people saw that the Imam seemed to be in a state of anxiety or worry because he was praying for the cure of that child, as any parent would and should. Then after a while, they saw that the Imam was in a state of peace. And because they didn't know, they assumed that the child was cured. And when they asked, the Imam said, no, the child is no longer alive. Allah has taken them. And they said, but it would have been the reverse if we were in your shoes. We would have some hope and some peace so long as the child were alive. But then if there is a tragic death of a young child, that is when we would be beyond consolation. The Imam says, we Ahlul Bayt, when we are unsure of what God has decreed, that is when we have anxiety. We go back and forth, we stay awake, we pray, we ask Allah, because that is our obligation, to be alert, to be awake, to do our best. And then we are awaiting, not anxious in the sense that we don't trust God, but anxious in the sense that we have an obligation. We have to stand guard, and we have to do whatever we can to fulfill the trust that God has given us. And so that anxiety that you saw, that iltirab was in order for us to ensure that we are fulfilling that obligation. This child that was given to me is a trust from God. It was a gift from God. But then Allah revealed what was His will. If He had revealed His will by giving life to the child, then that was God's decree. And if He revealed His will by taking the life of the child, then that was His decree. In the end, it's God's property, it's God's trust. He gives, He tests, He receives. And now there is no anxiety, there is no uncertainty. Now that the child has died, I know that my obligation as a father is to remember and to pray, and to grieve, and to mourn, and to prepare a burial, and to offer consolation for those who are also in a state of loss and suffering and grief. But there isn't an uncertainty of what God has decreed. And so even if there is grief, and even if there is sadness, there is also a tranquility, a serenity, a peace in the heart and in the soul, because you know what it is that God has decreed. And these examples that we have from Ahlul Bayt, they are the illustration of those verses that we recite from Surah Al-Talaq. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. If you are pious, then Allah will give you a way out. Not necessarily the escape that you wanted from your problems, but the one that is best for you. And Allah will give you your rizq from where you do not expect, your sustenance from where you did not think that it would come. وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And whoever relies on Allah, Allah suffices them. إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ. Allah will attain His affair, and nobody can overtake or can make Allah forget or overpower Allah. قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدْرًا. Allah has made a measure and an affair for everything. Now, yesterday, we extended this discussion to politics. That's an area where people get very emotional. And sometimes they get very invested. Some of us are old enough to remember when people were very excited in the candidacy of Barack Obama, and a whole lot of people, they got involved in politics after having been cynical, saying, you know, this is historical, this is a change. And then there was a Rand Paul movement, and a whole lot of people got very excited, especially many young men, that yes, this is my hero. And then there are other candidates, other parties, other positions. So some people, they buy in. And as I said yesterday, there's several levels to say that you don't need to be that excited. Don't think that your vote, your franchise is that effective. But then there are other people who get disenchanted. And they say, you know what, this is just a conspiracy. They get these nice candidates who say the nice things against war. They get us to buy into the system. And then they go and they betray us. And so I'm going to stay away from all of that. Maybe there is a conspiracy. And maybe that is how the system is designed. But if your goal is to avoid war, then are you any closer to that by not participating and by just becoming cynical and saying there is no difference? Or are there real effects and influences that you can have by becoming educated and by becoming involved and not becoming part of the system or buying into the system, but learning more about it and learning where it is possible to influence policy, and if not policy, then discourse in a positive direction. And the greatest change that we can see is that when discourse shifts, that opens up possibilities, or it can close possibilities for people within society beyond the actual change in the law or the implementation of those laws. Go to places where you have a tyrant, a demagogue, a want-to-be fascist ruler who poisons people about religious groups, about minorities, about others, and then see how long that damage lasts, sometimes for generations. Even if the election that is lost in the next cycle. But that poison that has come within the body politic and within society, that may last not just for another couple cycles, but for generations. And so you see both kinds of polarization, they are incorrect. Both the one who says that we just need to invest in this system and that is going to be our salvation. We just need an interest group, we need a voting bloc, we need a lobby. And those who separate themselves and say, because I can't influence policy on a few key issues that are important and are pivotal, therefore I am going to turn my eyes to the change that can exist in policy in other areas and in discourse, even if they don't, if it is not possible to easily influence policy in society and in politics. And for the spiritual and social and economic well-being of society, discourse is the more fundamental battle. And that is where exercise of our agency and even our political franchise is one important element in ensuring that we are able to influence discourse. And we have examples of that from the lives of our imams. Briefly, I want to look at one part of the history of Islam, and there is much that can be said about that time, perhaps at another opportunity. But many of you are familiar that the dynasty of the Umayyads, it was overthrown and it was replaced by the Abbasids. And that movement, it may have started kind of under the surface and very quietly in the time of our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, but it finally gained Ya Ali. But it gained success in the time of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, our sixth Imam. Now, in one sense, Banu al-Abbas were more oppressive than Banu Umayyah. The way in which they arrested and spied and martyred our successive Imams and many other descendants of our Prophet was not less cruel. In some ways, it was perhaps more cruel than what Banu Umayyah did. And they did so in the name of Ahlul Bayt. So the call of Banu Abbas was Ar-Rida min Ali Muhammad, the pleasing one, the good and chosen one from the family of the Prophet. Their agents and lieutenants, Abu Muslim al-Khurasani, Abu Salama al-Khallal, they had grandiose titles. So Abu Salama al-Khallal, for example, was Wazir Ali Muhammad, the advisor, the helper, the minister of Ali Muhammad. Who did they mean by Ali Muhammad? Well, they wanted people to think it was Ahlul Bayt, because people were not inspired to revolt against an oppressive government and risk their property and their safety and even their lives and their families for anyone but Ahlul Bayt. And yet others, they kind of used their connection to the family of the Prophet or their closeness to Ahlul Bayt in order to take advantage of the loyalties and the sincerity and the simplicity and ignorance of people. So, Wazir Ali Muhammad, Ar-Rida min Ali Muhammad. But in reality, they were not loyal to the family of the Prophet. Now, in some ways, you can be cynical. And in some ways, you might say that let us go and let us try to take advantage and ride this horse that has not been domesticated. You will be injured, you will be killed, but you will not be able to tame it. One example of that is when Abu Muslim al-Khurasani sent a letter to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Now, Abu Muslim al-Khurasani, he was the main lieutenant of the Abbasids in Khurasan. And it was in Khurasan where they raised the majority of their army and their weapons and their money and their followers and the support. It was in the society people who loved Ahlul Bayt in a generic sense. They didn't know that Banu Abbas were working against Ahlul Bayt. But then he saw that maybe Banu Abbas, if they come to power, they're not going to be good. And he sent a letter to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, saying that if you accept the leadership, then I will depose my loyalty, I will renounce my loyalty to Banu Abbas, and I will follow you. So imagine now, this is, for example, the most powerful military and civilian officer in the Abbasid army. Khurasan did not know the Abbasid Imam, who was in hiding, in fact, in secret. Ibrahim al-Imam, and then As-Safah, and then Mansur. They were all in secret, in hiding, either in Iraq or in Syria, primarily in Syria, present-day Syria, in Raqqa. Khurasan was entirely in the control of Abu Muslim al-Khurasani, so he wasn't even the second in command, but in all practical terms, all of the power was in his hands. And he writes a letter And Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq simply addresses and says, "Ma anta min rijali wala zamanu zamani." You are not one of my men. Neither is this time my time. What does that mean? The Imam knows that a system that is inherently corrupt is not going to be rectified by magic. I did not send you, I did not train you. What you have done in Khurasan to raise that army was not done in accordance with Islamic principles. And so you can't just put the makeup of Islam on top of inherently najis or corrupt system and say now we have Islamized society. Why? وَلَا الزَّمَانُ زَمَانِي. Because this time is not my time. And therefore, the Imam said that I have nothing to do with you. Later, Abu Salama al-Khallal, he sent another agent. These different lieutenants of the Abbasids, they were realizing that the Abbasids were corrupt. And maybe many of them as revolutionaries, they had the weaknesses that prevented them from truly becoming humble and obedient to the Imams, but they still had some sense of justice or indignation, which was why they were willing to take such a step to risk their lives to overthrow the Umayyads. In other words, their opposition to evil was often sincere, even if their submission and humility to the truth was lacking. They were not necessarily purely cynical operators, revolutionaries and people who are attracted to a movement in the name of justice and for justice and risk their own lives. They often have some good. And don't judge them or call them out as if they are just like their opponents. But if they are impulsive or emotional or undisciplined, then their good may be overcome by evil. So now Abu Salama al-Khallal, when he realized that the Abbasids are not worth following, he called his trusted advisor. He said, I'm going to write you 3 letters. And I want you to take these 3 letters in turn to 3 members of Ahlul Bayt. Because remember, we didn't have instant communications. These days, I can say that I'm going to call, I have a wedding, I'm going to call Maulana so-and-so. And if they say that they're not available, then I will go and I will call so-and-so. And if they're not available, then I'll reach out to the third. Back then, you didn't have that instant communication. And so, he said, the first letter is written to Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq. If he, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If he accepts, then burn the other 2 letters, or destroy them. If he doesn't, then take the second letter to Abdullah al-Mahd, Abdullah ibn Hasan ibn Hasan, who was the cousin of Imam Muhammad Baqir and, in a sense, the uncle of our 6th Imam, a few years older than Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, and therefore some people considered him at that time to be the head of Banu Hashim, because he was the senior member of Banu Hashim, although Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was the Imam. And there was a little bit of a hesitation from Abdullah to fully acknowledge that although Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq may not be as senior in terms of his generation, because he was in the generation of grandchildren of Imam Zainul Abidin and Abdullah al-Mahd, he was in the generation of Imam Muhammad Baqir, in the generation of the children of Imam Zainul Abidin, but he respected Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq outwardly and still had a little bit of competitiveness within him. So the second letter went to him. When the letter came to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, he ignored it. The messenger said, don't you want to read the letter? So the Imam said, bring a lamp. And lamps back then, they had a flame, right? A candle and a flame. So the messenger said that probably the Imam wants the lamp because the messenger would come at night. These kinds of secret messages, they can't be sent in the daytime. There would be spies and it would be dangerous. He came at night in the darkness. He said, the Imam has asked for the lamp in order to read the letter. And when the lamp came, the Imam put the letter in the flame and burned it without reading it. He said, aren't you going to answer the letter? The Imam said, I just answered it. That's the answer. I'm not going to dignify that with a response. There is a revolution brewing. And the Imam knew better than anyone because he had predicted this in a meeting of Bani Hashim earlier in a place called Abwa between Mecca and Medina, that this is going to be a successful overthrow of the Umayyads. But the Imam said that we're not going to get caught up in the commotion. And وَلَا الزَّمَانُ زَمَانِ, think that before the time has come, before we have done the hard work of steeling ourselves and readying ourselves and educating ourselves about our values and our religion, and then disciplining ourselves to stand firm through thick and thin, the promise of God is not going to come to pass. That night, Abdullah al-Ma'ad came to the door of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Very enthusiastic. The Imam said, what brought you here? You are the elder of our family. You should have sent a message. I would have come to your house. He said, this is something greater than anything that you could imagine. It couldn't wait till tomorrow. The Imam said, what? He said that our Shia sent us a letter from Khurasan. They say that they are going to follow us, and I have come to get your advice and to share this information with you. There was an outward, of course, respect that Abdullah al-Mahad had. The Imam said, our Shia, do you know their names? Did you send them to Khurasan? Do they obey your command? They are not our Shia, even if they are taking our name. Don't get caught up in the commotion, regardless if the candidate is Muslim, even if the candidate is Shia, Ithna Ashari, even if it looks like everything is going to be good. Don't get caught up in the enthusiasm. But what was the outcome of Banu al-Abbas? Although their oppression was greater, and although their ability to infiltrate and to harm the Shia was greater, because they had a greater knowledge of and closeness to not only the Imams themselves but even the Shia, it was because of that slogan of Ar-Rida min Ali Muhammad, even if the Abbasids wielded the slogan without sincerity, that people came and became more familiar with the scholarship, the teachings, the leadership, and even the infallibility and the imamat of Ahlul Bayt. And the Imams, they took advantage of that opportunity to spread their discourse and their teachings. And although initially the Imams even told people like Safwan al-Jamal not to get involved within the political system, because it corrupts you to become a part of a corrupt system. Once the Imams had given their teachings and established the principles and the identity of the community, then in certain cases our Imams, like Imam Musa Kadhim with Ali ibn Yaqteen and others in that generation and afterwards, did encourage them that no, make sure that you are present even in that position of a ministry, even in that position in government, so that you, because you have to first know what is right, so that you can then help the believers, you can reduce the injustice of that oppressive government. So you see that what the Imams did is, without letting their followers get caught up in that initial commotion, that yes, we are going to join this movement and we are going to become part of that chaos, and then you just become another member of that political party. And you forget who you are in the process of trying to become influential. You become influential, but influential as a cog in that machine. What did the Imams do? They first said, stand back and learn what is your discourse, your beliefs, your practices, your aqeedah, the law that is the proper implementation of Islam. Learn what are the priorities and the values that a follower of Ahlul Bayt or a true Muslim should seek to encourage and to propagate within society. And when you do that, then yes, where there are elements that it is possible for you to exert influence as a person in government or in business, then do so. And you will find that many of the followers of our imams, in one way or another, they had a presence in the discourse in society. One of those examples was Hisham ibn al-Hakam. We generally know of Hisham ibn al-Hakam from his youth, in the time of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, because he was one of the younger companions of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. He was a prominent debater and somebody who would teach people about imamat even before he had a full beard. But Hisham ibn al-Hakam had a long and distinguished career, and one of the ways that he was the most influential of teaching and spreading the belief in imamat was in the court of Harun in Baghdad. During the time of our 7th Imam, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam. Now here it wasn't somebody who is a part of the government, but who had that scholarly presence and that influence, both in terms of wealth and education, that he was a presence in the court. And at a time when the 7th Imam himself was often unable to reach his Shia because he was under house arrest or actually in prison at different times, it was people like Hisham ibn al-Hakam who publicly carried the torch of calling people towards the truth. And so, that is what we should also do as followers of Ahlul Bayt in order to ensure that we do not go to one extreme or the other of cynicism and self-isolation or self-ghettoization, nor of forgetting what the source of our values and our priorities is, and just becoming part of a political system where we become happy with minimal gains and we forget that there is a different vista and a different world that we are striving for and that we are praying for. And that role that people like Hisham ibn al-Hakam or Ali ibn Yaqteen or other very courageous companions and followers of the Imams played in the time of Imam Hussein and in the struggle of Karbala, that role was played by his brother Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. There is perhaps a wisdom because of which in Karbala there are two shrines that we visit. The shrine of Imam Hussein and the shrine of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. We don't believe in coincidences. There is a wisdom in what Allah decrees and what He brings about to pass, and in the way that Allah governs the shrines of Ahlul Bayt. Our 4th Imam himself describes his uncle Abbas as somebody who was nafidhul basira, of penetrating insight and deep knowledge, because whatever knowledge anyone else may attain, it is indirect through books and through study. But the knowledge that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas had, it was through the direct learning and instruction that came from a ma'soom, and not just one ma'soom. He was a son of Amirul Mu'mineen. He was a loyal brother and follower and an obedient servant, first of his brother Imam Hasan during his imamat, and then of Imam Hussein during his imamat. So we remember the courage of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, because that was the attribute that the enemy saw and was afraid of. But remember that the true greatness of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, in spite of or even more than his great courage, was his knowledge and his obedience and his willingness to follow the command of the Imam without question. And this is why Ahlul Bayt, and particularly Imam Hussein and Lady Zainab, they placed so much trust on Abbas throughout the journey to Karbala. As long as Abbas was by the side of Imam Hussein, he never felt like he did not have an army. He never felt like he was outnumbered. Even before the day of Ashura, sometimes the Imam would be faced with verbal attacks by the enemy. Sometimes they would pretend to actually attack, to strike fear into the hearts of those who were with the Imam, and especially the children. And whenever there was a verbal attack, the Imam would turn to Abbas, "Oh Abbas, go forward and answer them." Whenever there was a military attack, the Imam would say, "Oh Abbas, go forward and answer them. Repel their attack." And that is why until the day of Ashura, Abbas, who was the standard bearer and the one who stood side by side with Imam Hussein, he was a source of strength. Lady Zainab did not have to fear for her veil. Sakina did not have to fear for her safety. The companions of the Imam did not have to fear for their battle formations so long as Abbas was by the side of their Imam and he was their commander appointed by the Imam. And when the day of Ashura came, Abbas, many times he wished that he could go to the Imam and say that just give me permission to go to battle. I was readied for this day by my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, who is my father, who is my trainer, who is the one who prayed to Allah to allow me to see the day of Karbala and to be by the side of my Imam, he was one who faced the enemy alone. And whether it be the battle of Badr or whether it be the battle of Uhud or the battle of Ahzab or the battle of Hunayn, even if everyone flees and even if the enemy be in their hundreds or in their thousands, Imam Ali would still fight. And I, who am the son of Ali, who am trained by Ali, I am ready to carry on that same battle and that same courage. But then Abbas would say to himself that if I go to battle and I am killed, I will achieve my heart's desire, but my brother Hussein will be left alone. And so, no matter how many times the thought came to his mind, Abbas did not ask Imam Hussein for permission to go to battle until the day of Ashura grew into the afternoon and the sun began to decline in the sky, and those brave soldiers who offered their lives one after another in the defense of Islam, now their bodies were lying on the sands of Karbala. And at that time Abbas comes to the Imam and he says, "Oh my master, oh my Imam, oh my leader, I am ready for the battle if you give me permission." And the Imam said that, "Abbas, you are the standard bearer of my army. How can I let you go to face the enemy?" And Abbas turned towards those martyred bodies strewn on Karbala's sands. He said, "Oh Imam, where is our army of which I am the standard bearer? There remain none but you and I wish to give my life in defense of your mission and in order to protect your sacred life." And the Imam knew that what Abbas spoke was true. He knew that there was no more army, but the standard of Islam must be preserved. And for a warrior who had trained for battle, for a warrior who grew up with the example of the heroism of his own father, and with that same blood in his veins and that same sword in his arms, the mission that Imam gave him was even more difficult than to face the enemy in their thousands while he was all alone. The Imam said that, "Oh Abbas, I will send you for battle, but your sword will be sheathed. And in one hand I ask you to carry our flag, our standard." The last time the standard of Islam would fly freely in the air and be witnessed by humanity. And Abbas, in your other heart, take the water skin and bring water. For since morning I have heard the call of the children that they are thirsty, and because of the heat of battle, I have not been able to provide water for them. Oh, Abbas, now that the battle is nearing its end, will you go and bring water for the children? Abbas had a battle to fight. He had a mission that had been given to him. He charged the enemy. 500 armed men guarded the Euphrates. They had their weapons drawn. They had their shields in front of them. Abbas had no weapon, but so courageous was he, and so rapid was his charge that the enemy fled before him. Abbas reached the water. He filled the water skin. He forgot his own thirst. He turned back and he rushed towards the tents where Ahlul Bayt were to answer the call of the Imam. And as he turned back, those enemy soldiers that had fled in fear, they came, and now they attacked Abbas all at once. How many weapons were lodged? How many wounds were there in the body of Abbas? All of them were from behind. None dared to come and attack him from the front. First his right arm and then his left arm was cut from his body. And the loss of blood, the injuries, they did not stop Abbas from fulfilling his mission. But one arrow came that lodged itself not in the body of Abbas, but in the water skin that he carried. And as the water flowed from the water skin and mixed with the blood from the wounds of this loyal soldier of the Imam, it was as if Abbas knew that his mission had been fulfilled. Imam Hussein had not sent him to bring water, but to show the innocence and the injustice that was being done to Ahlul Bayt. And the mission of Abbas was fulfilled. The standard of Islam had waved with dignity one final time. But as Abbas fell to the ground, that standard began to flutter. And the Imam was looking at that standard of Abbas. He was watching with pride as his brother went to the water and began his journey back. As each injury came to Abbas and the standard shook, the Imam prayed for safety for his brother. But then he saw that the standard began to fall to the ground. And the Imam knew that so long as Abbas strength in his body, he would never allow that to happen. The Imam turned his head towards the heavens to pray to Allah when he heard a voice calling out to him, As-salamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. The Imam rushed to the side of his brother, and as he stood over the wounded body of the brother and took the water skin in his hand and lifted that standard into his own arms, he called out, "Oh my brother, what have they done to you?" Allah, Kasarabari. My brother Abbas, my back is broken, and seeing your martyrdom, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. O Allah, accept this remembrance on our behalf. Count us among the true followers of Ahlul Bayt, and grant us their love and obedience to their command and their example, and their intercession and their company in heaven. O Allah, hasten the appearance of our Imam, and count us among his sincere followers.
Brothers and sisters, that concludes our program. Please make your way upstairs to the masjid.